The sky above Copper Creek shimmered with late afternoon heat, the kind that made the horizon bend and shimmer like a dream. Dust drifted across the wide, cracked road leading to the old ranch, the one everyone in town knew by name but no one wanted to touch. The Copper Creek Ranch had once been a proud, thriving stretch of land. Now, its wooden fences sagged, the barn leaned to one side like a tired old man, and the once green fields lay dry and brittle. It was auction day, and nearly half the town had gathered. People didn't come because they wanted to buy the place, they came for the spectacle. Whenever Sheriff Boone ran an auction, there was sure to be laughter, a little cruelty, and plenty of gossip. Boone stood on the porch of the ranch house, his boots polished, his badge gleaming, and his belly straining against his belt. He had that grin people either feared or hated, depending on how well they knew him. He slapped his hat against his thigh and called out in his deep, drawling voice, "All right, folks. Let's get this show started." The crowd shuffled closer, murmuring. Dust rose around their boots. A few men from the saloon leaned against a wagon, already grinning like they knew something funny was coming. Boone tapped a sheet of paper on the old railing. Copper Creek Ranch, he read loudly, pretending to sound official, once owned by the late Harold May. Comes with the house, barn, a few acres of land, and, his eyes gleamed as he paused for effect, one servant. Free of charge. The crowd chuckled. Someone in the back whistled. Boone turned, pointing toward the far corner of the porch. "She's right there, folks," he said, his voice oozing mockery. Miss Ellie May herself. All eyes turned. Ellie sat on the porch steps, her shoulders hunched, her dress faded from too many washes. Her hair, once golden brown, hung in tangled waves around her round, tired face. She wasn't looking at anyone, her gaze stayed fixed on the wooden boards beneath her feet. She held a chipped mug between her fingers, though it was empty. The laughter grew louder, sharper, slicing through the hot air. "You mean she comes with the land?" A man shouted. "That's quite a bargain." Another added, "Don't forget to feed her twice a day or she'll eat the cows too." Boone threw his head back and laughed the loudest. Ellie didn't flinch. She'd heard worse before. She'd lived her whole life being the joke of Copper Creek. Her father had died 2 winters ago, leaving behind debt and this dying ranch. No one offered to help her. They said she was lazy, slow, too big to work, too quiet to matter. She'd tried to sell eggs, milk, anything to survive, but the town only sneered. When the bank repossessed the land, Boone offered to handle the sale personally. Now she was just another item on his list. The sun burned hotter. Sweat dripped down the side of Ellie's face, but she didn't lift a hand to wipe it. Boone's voice thundered again. "All right, who'll start the bidding? $100 for the land, and the lady." The laughter turned into whispers. Even for a broken ranch, $100 was too much. Nobody wanted this cursed place. A few men shifted uncomfortably. No one raised a hand. Boone smirked, amused by his own cruelty. "Come on, folks, you'll get free company. She'll clean, she'll cook, if she can move fast enough." A ripple of mean laughter rolled through the crowd again. But one man didn't laugh. He stood near the back, tall and lean, his coat covered in dust from travel. His eyes were pale gray, calm and unreadable beneath the brim of his hat. His name was Jonas Reed, though few in Copper Creek recognized him. He'd been gone for years, off fighting in wars that newspapers barely wrote about anymore. He'd seen cruelty in many forms, but something about the sheriff's words and the look on that girl's face stirred something heavy in his chest. Boone noticed him finally and called out, "You there, stranger? Fancy owning a ranch and a servant?" Jonas's gaze moved to Ellie. She hadn't looked up, not even once. He could see how tightly she held that empty mug, as though it was the last thing in her life that hadn't been taken from her. He saw humiliation pressed into every line of her face, every tremble in her hands. Jonas took a slow step forward. "How much?" he asked quietly. The sheriff blinked, surprised that anyone was actually interested. "Didn't you hear me? $100. You'd be a fool to pay more." Jonas reached into his pocket, pulled out a small leather pouch, and poured a few silver coins into his hand. They clinked softly in the silent air. "I'll take it," he said. The murmurs started immediately. "Is he crazy? Who is that? He just bought himself trouble." Boone laughed uncertainly, trying to regain his tone. Now hold on, mister. You sure about this? Land's worth less than the nails holding it together. I'm sure, Jonas said. He held Boone's gaze with quiet steel. I'm not buying land. I'm buying a chance to set something right. Boone's smirk faltered. For a second, the sheriff didn't know what to say. But the coins glittered in his palm, and greed won over confusion. Fine then, he muttered, shoving the papers toward Jonas. You're the proud owner of Copper Creek Ranch, and whatever comes with it. Jonas signed his name with a firm hand, the pen scratching across the page. The deal was done. He turned toward Ellie, who still hadn't moved. He approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. She finally looked up, her eyes wide and uncertain. For the first time, someone looked at her and didn't laugh. Jonas's gaze held no pity, only quiet respect. You can keep your home, he said softly. I just came to help you fix it. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She just nodded, her throat tight with disbelief. Behind them, Boone huffed. You'll regret it, he called, climbing into his wagon. That place'll drain you dry, just like it did her old man. Jonas didn't answer. He just turned to Ellie, glanced at the land around them, the broken fences, the dry fields, and said, let's start with the barn. Sun'll set soon. For the first time in months, Ellie stood. The porch creaked under her weight, but her steps were steady. She followed him without a word, a faint spark in her chest she hadn't felt in years. The sheriff's laughter faded behind them, replaced by the distant rustle of wind in the grass and the sound of two people beginning, quietly, to rebuild what the world had thrown away. The days that followed were unlike anything Ellie had ever known. At first, she didn't believe Jonas Reed meant to stay. Men in town had mocked her before, promised help, and left before sunrise. But he stayed. Every morning, she woke to the sound of his boots on the porch and the smell of coffee brewing over the old stove. He never ordered her around or treated her like a servant. Instead, he worked beside her, hammering broken boards, clearing brush, fixing the fence line one splinter at a time. At first, she barely spoke. She didn't know how to act around someone who didn't laugh at her or look through her as if she were invisible. Jonas didn't push. He talked just enough for both of them, about small things, like the weather, the sound of coyotes at night, or how the stars looked brighter here than anywhere else he'd been. Slowly, she began to answer. A word at a time, a sentence here and there. By the second week, she was laughing at his dry humor. It startled her when it first happened. The sound felt strange in her throat, unfamiliar. Jonas just smiled and said, good to hear some life around here again. He taught her how to mend a saddle, how to patch a roof, and how to repair the old windmill that hadn't spun in years. Ellie, who'd always been told she was clumsy and slow, found herself learning quickly. Her hands grew rough, her muscles stronger. When she caught sight of herself in the dusty mirror one night, she hardly recognized the woman staring back, sunburned, tired, but alive. Sometimes, when she thought Jonas wasn't looking, she'd watch him from across the field. There was something steady about the way he moved, as if no task was beneath him. But his eyes carried the same weariness that had once lived in hers, the kind that comes from carrying too much pain for too long. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the ranch gold, she brought him a tin cup of water. He was kneeling near the fence, fixing a post. His shirt clung to his back, streaked with dirt and sweat. You don't have to keep working past sundown, she said softly. He looked up, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Neither do you. But here we are. She hesitated, then sat beside him on the dry grass. They watched the sky for a while in silence, the cicadas humming around them. Finally, she asked, why did you buy this place? Everyone in town thinks you're crazy. Jonas took a long sip from the cup before answering. I don't care what they think. I knew your father once, long time ago. He helped me when I had nothing. Fed me when I was just a broke drifter with nowhere to go. I owed him a debt. Ellie blinked in surprise. Her father had never spoken of him. I came back from the war, Jonas continued quietly, and I heard he'd passed. Then I heard what Boone was doing, turning his daughter into a town joke. That didn't sit right with me. Ellie looked down, twisting her fingers together. They've always laughed. I thought it was normal. Guess I stopped expecting anything else. Jonas's tone softened. That's not normal. And you deserve better than that. Something inside her shifted. A small, fragile hope she hadn't felt since childhood. From then on, they worked not just to repair the ranch, but to restore its soul. Jonas bought a few chickens, fixed the well, and helped Ellie plant vegetables where the weeds used to grow. She learned to ride again, shaky at first, but with a quiet pride each time she didn't fall. When they sold their first basket of eggs at the market, the townsfolk stared. Boone's buddies whispered behind their hands, but Ellie stood tall beside Jonas, her chin lifted. "Morning, Sheriff," Jonas greeted Boone as they passed the sheriff's office. Boone's smirk returned, but it looked thinner now, forced. "Well, if it isn't the war hero and his," he paused, glancing at Ellie, "partner in crime." Ellie met his gaze without flinching. "Just working folk, Sheriff," she said. He chuckled, though the sound was hollow. "Don't work too hard. That land'll break you sooner or later." "Maybe," Jonas replied, "but we're a little harder to break than we look." Boone watched them walk away, the laughter dying on his tongue. Weeks turned into months. The ranch, once a symbol of ruin, began to breathe again. Fresh paint brightened the barn. Wildflowers crept along the fence line. The windmill creaked back to life, its blades turning slow and steady. People passing by started to notice. Some even stopped to buy eggs, milk, or fresh vegetables. Others came out of curiosity, to see the girl they used to mock now running her own land. Ellie never bragged, never reminded them of their cruelty. She simply smiled and handed them their goods with calm dignity. The same townsfolk who once whispered behind her back now said polite hellos. It wasn't friendship, but it was a start. One late afternoon, while Ellie was painting the new sign for the gate, she heard hooves approaching. Sheriff Boone's horse stopped in front of the fence, dust swirling around its legs. "Well, I'll be," Boone muttered. "Didn't think you two would last the summer." Jonas came out from the barn, wiping his hands. "Guess you were wrong," he said evenly. Boone swung down from his saddle and eyed the freshly painted sign. His grin faltered as he read the words, "Ellie Mae's Ranch, open for business." Boone's face reddened slightly. "You changed the deed." Jonas nodded. "Transferred it last week. She owns the land outright now." Boone's eyes flickered between them. "You serious? You gave her the place?" "It was hers all along," Jonas said. "I just made sure the papers agreed." Ellie stepped forward, paintbrush still in hand, and met Boone's gaze. For the first time, she didn't look away. "You sold me once," she said quietly. "But you can't buy me again." A tense silence hung between them. The sheriff opened his mouth, but no words came. He climbed back onto his horse, muttering something under his breath. When he rode off, the dust trailed behind him like shame. Jonas turned to Ellie. "You did good," he said simply. She looked at the sign, her heart full. "We did good," she corrected. That evening, the two of them sat on the porch steps, watching the sunset spill across the land like fire and honey. The barn glowed in the fading light, the air smelled of fresh paint and warm soil, and the first stars began to appear. For a long time, neither spoke. The silence wasn't empty anymore, it was peaceful, like the earth itself had finally exhaled. After a while, Jonas said, "You ever think your father's watching this?" Ellie smiled faintly. "I hope so. Maybe he's laughing, but for the right reasons this time." Jonas nodded, tipping his hat back. "You've earned every bit of this." She looked out at the ranch, her ranch, and whispered, "No. We both did." And as the wind rustled through the tall grass, the Copper Creek Ranch stood strong again, no longer a broken memory of loss, but a place reborn through kindness, courage, and the simple truth that dignity, once stolen, can always be reclaimed.